Some time ago, I bought Red Dead Redemption 2 on my Xbox One, and I never really got around to playing it. Because I never enjoyed the original. I don't like Rockstar games in general, and upon playing a little bit of Red Dead Redemption 2, it really is more of the same. And I do think it's time to really talk about like why I don't like Rockstar games, or more specifically their heavy hitters, Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto. And I think talking about Red Dead Redemption 2, their most recent game, is actually a pretty good place to start because, we have nothing more recent to compare it to. Like, this is a good example of like where things are going, why things are going downhill, and why we cannot take this company seriously in any way, shape, or form. Tears of the Kingdom was better than this. Bethesda is putting out better work, and these guys are. Like, Rockstar is a declining company, and right now nobody wants to admit it because, oh man, they made Grand Theft Auto 5. My girlfriend goes around like killing people in it. Like, it's the most fun game in the world. No, okay? Grand Theft Auto has nothing going for it aside from being a police brutality simulator, right? That is Grand Theft Auto, right? It is wish fulfillment for like ghetto, like low trash, like low quality, like trashy people, right? Grand Theft Auto is a terrible video game franchise from a conceptual standpoint. The missions are lame, the general structure is lame, the controls are terrible, the story, the writing is just awful. It pushes bad messages. It is just a complete mess, and nobody really wants to admit it. And over time, the shock value and the appeal of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead, it really has fallen by the wayside. And I think the problems are actually a lot more prevalent in Red Dead Redemption than it is in Grand Theft Auto, because Red Dead Redemption really tries to take itself seriously. It really does pretend as if it's a serious, like, Western story that really, respects its characters, respects the world, respects like real history, when that's clearly not the case when it comes to like some of the things you do in these missions with like like the morality of the characters and like, how things are set up, how the gang is run, like the characters, the way they talk, act, behave, treat each other. Like, it all just clashes in the most embarrassing way possible, right? Like, I just really struggle to really relate to these characters at all. The game does not do a very good job making you feel like you're part of a gang, right? It really does try to make you feel as if these people are just down on their luck and they're just trying to make a better life for themselves. But that's really not true, is it? Like, all they would have to do realistically is just find a town somewhere and then get a job, right? Like, do something, right? It'll take a while, right? Like, it'll take some effort, but no, like, again, they've spent the past 20 years or so, like, being a gang, like killing people, robbing trains, and they're surprised that something bad has happened to them, right? You're supposed to believe that like Dutch is some hugely influential, charismatic leader who really has this entire group like mesmerized with how he like cares about them and wants the best for them and is actively trying to make it happen, right? Like Griffith, right? That is what Dutch is supposed to be. He is supposed to be the Griffith of Red Dead Redemption 2, but it doesn't work. Like, right from the onset, like, anyone with more than 2 brain cells will be able to see through his shit. As someone who like who does nothing but like utter empty promises to like his followers that people just blindly believe him because, like, oh man, he's Dutch. He'd never steer us wrong. He'd never steer us wrong. Oh man, I can't do a Western accent. Sorry, but like, you know how it is, right? Like, the story wants you to like believe one thing about the character. Like you understand like the relationship between that he's supposed to have with the others, but then like you have what's clearly in front of your face, and you're just like, how exactly does anyone like buy into this? Like, why is there not more of a backlash at this stage, considering all that's happened, like, and everything that's going to happen going forward? It's just a complete mess. And of course, this is just the story structure, but the reason I have to like emphasize the story in Red Dead so much, and this holds true to the original, is that again, it is very much the focus of these games. Like, the games are not about like exploring the wilderness and doing things in the open world and having fun. That's like Zelda's thing, right? Red Dead is about you going through this linear, boring plot, trying to doing like these incredibly structured linear missions that are honestly worse than like something that a typical COD campaign will put out. Like the thing about like these open world games is that like unlike these more linear games that have like really cool set pieces that you can play like organically that just kind of blend together in like a blend of like stylistic like action goodness, stuff like Bayonetta 3, stuff like Astral Chain, stuff like you know so many like better linear games, right? Like Red Dead 2 like has you do this thing where like you can't deviate off like your path at all right? You have to play the game the way the game wants you to, even though you're in like this open world setting. It's so ridiculous, like having to spend like 5 minutes following behind like Dutch and the boys, getting to your destination, having them to explain to you what's going to happen, and then like you going like doing like this basic thing, and like there's no like room for creativity, there's no room for innovation, there's no room for like being creative with your mission goals. Like it's entirely structured, right? It is the complete polar opposite of what Tears of the Kingdom did, where how you reach things and how you accomplish them is completely up to you, right? And I think this is the big reason why Zelda is objectively better than anything Rockstar has ever made, because Rockstar does not allow you to role play. They do not allow you to be creative. They do not allow you to play a game. Like what you are doing is watching a movie. Like what you're doing is seeing a bunch of characters like throw trite dialogue back and forth, like establishing their backgrounds, their personalities, their relationships with one another in an extremely inorganic, like fake way, right? It does not take this long to establish characters. Like that should be something that you do like almost immediately after their introductions, right? Like Red Dead Redemption 2 is so padded with its storyline and like its character interactions with getting to destinations, with doing things, that like there is no room for the gameplay to really become relevant at all, right? When I robbed that train, when like I just walked slowly down the corridors, shooting any fool that got in my way with the auto target system that every Rockstar game has, because everyone who plays a Rockstar game is a filthy casual. Like I didn't feel cool. I didn't feel like a badass. I didn't feel like I was hardcore. Like I felt like I was just going through the motions, right? Like the game does not feel like a game, right? It doesn't feel like it has any real challenge. It doesn't have any structure. It doesn't have like anything that really matters to anything, really. Like what are I just feel like playing this, like, wow, this is really boring. This is really dull. This is really uninspired. This really just does not work for me at all, right? Like, there's nothing good about this gameplay. And I do think that is the core aspect of Red Dead that really just grates me, is that like people worship this IP just because it's the only major Western video game franchise right now. Like, oh, it's the only game where you can tie people up and leave them on train tracks. Well, why would you want to do that, right? Like, what benefit does that serve your player to do that, other than like the pure amusement, right? It's the Red Dead equivalent of like beating up a hooker to take your money back. Like, why exactly would I, as a player, ever do that? How does that benefit me? There are more efficient ways to get money, right? There's more efficient ways to play the game. So why would I do it that particular way? It doesn't have any real substance to it. It is entirely for shock value, and that's kind of what we're seeing with Red Dead and like the collapse of Rockstar Games, is that like with the shock value just fading away, with other games being more shocking, more graphic, more violent, like better made, like Rockstar really doesn't have the appeal that it used to. Like at this point, I feel as if the company is really only coasting by on its brand name, right? Like Red Dead Redemption 2 sold like 40 million units to a bunch of filthy casuals, but how many of them like actually finished the game? How many of them can actually like remember anything about the story? How many of them actually care about what happens? Like it is, in essence, this generation Skyrim, right? It's a game that came out, sold like tens of millions of units, and yet nobody really cares about anything about it, because like, oh, I'm just a cowboy going around like blasting people. Like, no, it's not a remarkable game in any way, shape, or form. And I really wonder how much longer it's going to take for Rockstar to kind of go under because, they've been having problems with all their subsidiary franchises. Everything that isn't Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead just completely flops. Like, they can't put out games like more quickly than a decade. It takes an entire decade of work to like put out one of these things. And I think more and more the cracks are starting to show. I think more and more people are going to get bored of the formula. Like, I can already tell you, playing Red Dead Redemption 2, what exactly does this game do better than the original Red Dead? I didn't like the original Red Dead to begin with, but at the very least, you had a setup. There are moments where like you actually feel like you're part of a Western movie. Like, there are moments where you feel like, oh yeah, this is what I would do if I was in a Western film. Like, RDR2 doesn't have that. Like, it has a bunch of slow, tedious missions that aren't really fun to play and aren't all that interesting. Like, as much as I dislike the original, at the very least, it did have more gameplay segments than this. At the very least, it was better paced. At the very least, you had a little bit of freedom to like go between the town and like the ranch in the beginning and have a little bit of like explore a little bit. Like, RDR2 does not have that. Like, RDR2 is in no way impressive and is not likely a game that I will return to anytime soon.